The 1970s didn't just bring new motorcycles, they brought a revolution. Japanese builders unleashed bikes that left European and American rivals in the dust, chasing speed records and rewriting performance standards. From lightweight rockets that ripped through the quarter mile to heavyweight machines that redefined the superbike, these are the 18 fastest 1970s Japanese motorcycles ever made. Number 18. Yamaha RD 350. In an era when size usually dictated speed, the Yamaha RD 350 proved that raw performance could come in a smaller package. Riders expecting another modest middleweight quickly discovered that this two-stroke twin had the pace to humble much larger machines, setting a new standard for what a lightweight motorcycle could achieve. The secret began with its engine, an air-cooled parallel twin displacing 347 cubic centimeters. Thanks to reed valve induction and twin carburetors, it produced roughly 39 horsepower and 28 pound-feet of torque. On paper, those numbers seemed manageable, but once paired with a frame weighing just over 350 pounds, the effect was startling. It launched hard, climbed through the revs with urgency, and pulled with an intensity that riders of the time weren't prepared for. That urgency translated into serious real-world speed. The Yamaha RD 350 could push past 105 miles per hour, a figure that put it shoulder to shoulder with early superbikes. More importantly, it tore down the quarter mile in roughly 14 seconds, proving that a so-called lightweight could dominate at the drag strip. In an age when straight-line acceleration defined bragging rights, this was enough to make the RD a giant killer. Yet its performance wasn't limited to sprints alone. Where heavier four-cylinder machines sometimes struggled in tight bends, the Yamaha RD 350 carried its speed with agility. The short wheelbase and quick steering allowed riders to dive into corners without hesitation, then rock it out with the kind of drive that left larger rivals scrambling to keep up. This ability to maintain high pace everywhere, straights and corners alike, was what separated the RD from ordinary middleweights. The Yamaha RD 350 deserves recognition because it shattered expectations of what a mid-class motorcycle could do. In the 1970s, it wasn't just another two-stroke. It was proof that speed belonged not only to the biggest bikes, but also to the ones sharp enough to make every horsepower count. Number 17. Kawasaki H2750 Mach 4. When Kawasaki released the H2750 Mach 4 in 1972, it was built with one clear goal in mind: to be the fastest motorcycle on the street. At a time when rivals were still refining their big four-strokes, Kawasaki doubled down on two-stroke performance and delivered a machine that set new acceleration benchmarks. Its engine was a two-stroke, three-cylinder unit displacing 743 cubic centimeters. Output figures reached 74 horsepower and 57 pound-feet of torque. Those numbers placed it far ahead of most production motorcycles of the period. Combined with a curb weight under 500 pounds, the H2 offered a power-to-weight ratio that translated directly into speed. The results on the road spoke for themselves. Top speed reached around 120 miles per hour, and the quarter mile could be cleared in just over 12 seconds. For riders in the early 70s, these numbers meant the Kawasaki H2750 Mach 4 outpaced nearly everything else available. It delivered performance that matched or exceeded larger displacement machines, making it a reference point for what fast truly meant in its era. Handling, however, was another story. The short wheelbase and stiff frame meant the bike could feel unsettled at high speeds or in tight corners. Combined with the abrupt delivery of two-stroke power, it demanded a confident rider. Yet for those who learned its limits, the payoff was unmatched acceleration and straight-line dominance. What secured the reputation of the Kawasaki H2750 Mach 4 was not refinement, but outright speed. In the 1970s, no other Japanese motorcycle combined displacement, output, and acceleration in quite the same way, and that is why it remains one of the defining fast machines of its time. Number 16. Kawasaki Z1. By the early 1970s, the motorcycle world was waiting for the next big leap in performance. Kawasaki answered that call with the Z1, a machine that instantly shifted the balance of power and gave riders access to speed that was previously reserved for racing circuits. At its core was an inline-4 engine with double overhead camshafts, displacing 903 cubic centimeters. It produced 82 horsepower and 54 pound-feet of torque, numbers that placed it at the top of production performance when it debuted in 1972. A 5-speed transmission and carefully tuned gearing ensured that every ounce of that output translated into real acceleration on the road. The results were undeniable. The Kawasaki Z1 could reach 132 miles per hour, a figure that eclipsed nearly all of its competitors. In quarter-mile runs, it delivered times in the 12-second range, around 12.6 seconds, which made it one of the quickest production machines money could buy at the time. More importantly, these figures were repeatable. Riders didn't just get a bike that could hit big numbers once, they got a motorcycle that consistently delivered high-speed performance, run after run. What set the Z1 apart wasn't only its acceleration, but also its stability at speed. Many big bikes of the era struggled to maintain control past the ton, but Kawasaki's frame design and careful balance gave the Z1 a composure that matched its power. Test riders praised its ability to remain planted while still producing the strongest acceleration they had yet recorded. The Kawasaki Z1 secured its place in history because it wasn't just quick for its day, it redefined what fast meant in the 1970s. It was the superbike that proved Japan was no longer catching up, but leading outright. Still with us? Good, because the next machines didn't just go fast, they changed everything. Hit like, subscribe, and stick around. The real speed demons are about to show up. Number 15. Kawasaki KZ1000. By the late 1970s, Kawasaki had already proven its dominance with the Z1, but the competition was closing in fast. Honda, Suzuki, and Yamaha were all raising the bar, and Kawasaki needed an answer. That answer arrived in 1977 with the Kawasaki KZ1000, a motorcycle built to stay ahead in the race for outright speed. The KZ1000 carried forward the DNA of the Z1, but with more displacement and refinement. Its air-cooled inline-4 engine displaced 1,015 cubic centimeters, producing 83 horsepower and 63 pound-feet of torque. The extra capacity gave it stronger mid-range pull and harder acceleration, and with a 5-speed gearbox, riders could use every bit of that output to devastating effect. Numbers told the story clearly. The Kawasaki KZ1000 could reach 132 miles per hour, matching and sometimes surpassing its legendary predecessor. In the quarter mile, it delivered times in the 12-second bracket, with best runs landing around 12.2 seconds. That made it one of the quickest production motorcycles on the market, and it cemented Kawasaki's reputation as the builder of the fastest street machines of the era. What also set the KZ1000 apart was its balance of speed and durability. While some two-stroke rivals could offer explosive bursts of acceleration, they lacked the long-term reliability of Kawasaki's big four-stroke. The KZ delivered performance without compromise, making it not only a drag strip weapon, but also a dependable high-speed road bike. Riders appreciated that they could travel fast, hard, and often without fear of mechanical failure. The Kawasaki KZ1000 showed that Kawasaki's formula for speed was still the benchmark. Number 14. Yamaha X S1100E. By 1978, Yamaha was ready to prove that it could build not just competitive motorcycles, but machines that could dominate the top-speed charts. The Yamaha XS 1100E arrived as the company's biggest, boldest effort yet, a motorcycle that carried both the muscle of a superbike and the endurance of a long-distance tourer. Its engine was a double overhead camshaft inline-4, displacing 1,101 cubic centimeters. With output rated at 95 horsepower and torque, measured at 66 pound-feet, it had one of the strongest four-stroke power plants of its decade. What made the difference was not just the raw figures, but the way the engine delivered them. Strong pull from low revs, seamless surge in the middle, and enough top end to keep pushing long after others had run out of breath. That strength translated into serious performance. The Yamaha XS 1100E could cover the standing quarter mile in just under 12 seconds, and reach a top speed near 135 miles per hour. At the time, those numbers put it ahead of nearly all its rivals, and gave it a reputation as one of the fastest production motorcycles on sale. Riders discovered that its pace was not only impressive, but consistent, capable of repeating those figures mile after mile. What set it apart from the competition was the way it paired speed with stability. The shaft drive gave smooth delivery and low maintenance. The long wheelbase kept it steady at high speeds, and the broad torque curve meant it was never caught out of position. It could be pushed hard without becoming unmanageable, something that not every big bike of the era could claim. The Yamaha XS 1100E left its mark because it showed that sheer speed and everyday usability could exist in the same package. Number 13. Kawasaki Z 1300. Most motorcycles in the 1970s were built to be just fast enough. The Kawasaki Z 1300 wasn't one of them. It felt like an engineer's answer to a question no one asked. How much engine could you fit into a street bike before it stopped making sense? At the center of it all was a liquid-cooled inline-six with double overhead camshafts, displacing 1,286 cubic centimeters. It produced around 120 horsepower and 85 pound-feet of torque, numbers that dwarfed nearly everything else on the road. What made it more surprising was how calmly it delivered that power. Acceleration wasn't frantic, it was relentless, like a freight train gathering speed. The top speed reached close to 138 miles per hour, and the standing quarter mile was handled in just under 12 seconds. For a motorcycle weighing over 700 pounds, that kind of performance didn't just challenge expectations, it shattered them. The Kawasaki Z1300 wasn't built to be nimble or flickable, it was built to be untouchable in a straight line. Even more impressive was how it held together under pressure. The shaft drive offered smooth, low-maintenance power delivery, while the chassis provided enough stability to keep the bike composed at high speeds. Riders who pushed it hard discovered that the size actually worked in its favor, turning long highway pulls into effortless stretches of open road control. The Kawasaki Z1300 didn't chase lap times or race wins. It proved that Japanese engineering could take touring performance to an entirely different level. Number 12. Honda CBX 1000. There was nothing subtle about Honda's decision to build a road-going six-cylinder motorcycle. The CBX 1000 was forceful, physical, and unapologetically powerful from the moment it rolled into showrooms. At its heart was a massive air-cooled inline-six engine with dual overhead camshafts, displacing 1,047 cubic centimeters. Its claimed output was about 105 horsepower at 9,000 revolutions per minute, paired with roughly 63 pound-feet of torque. In a period known for four-cylinder benchmarks, this six-cylinder loomed larger, offering performance that felt more Grand Prix than street legal. What really made it unforgettable was how those figures translated on the road. Riders could push into the 135 miles per hour zone, and quarter-mile times dipped into the low 11-second region, around 11.4 seconds. That made the Honda CBX 1000 not just fast, but one of the fastest production motorcycles on the planet in 1978. It raised the bar, not by small increments, but by bending the conventional rules altogether. Even more striking was the sensation of its delivery. Instead of snapping or surging unpredictably, the engine rolled on like a finely tuned orchestra, rich, smooth, and powerful in every part of its rev range. The chassis and suspension were tuned to keep up, delivering composure whether you were cruising at highway speeds or ripping down a quarter mile. It wasn't just a powerful machine, it was a supremely balanced one. In a decade chasing speed, the Honda CBX 1000 was the bike that showed how accessible and downright refined true high performance could be. Number 11. Suzuki GS 1000. Every now and then, a motorcycle arrives that rewrites expectations for what a leader-class machine can do. The Suzuki GS 1000 was one of those rare models, fast enough to surprise and focused enough to deliver where it mattered most. Under the fuel tank, its heart was a four-stroke, air-cooled, double overhead camshaft inline-four engine, displacing 997 cubic centimeters. It produced about 90 horsepower at 8,200 revolutions per minute and roughly 61.5 pound-feet of torque at 6,500 revolutions per minute. Those figures put it firmly in the superbike category. Yet it retained a sense of refinement few bikes in its class could match. On the straightaway, the GS 1000 proved it could deliver. Its top speed hovered in the mid-130s miles per hour, around 136 miles per hour, and it dispatched the quarter mile in just under 12 seconds. That performance was especially remarkable when paired with a chassis known for grace under pressure, not just brute force. Speaking of chassis, this Suzuki's frame was light yet rigid, making it one of the few leader bikes of its era that handled corners with surprising agility. Riders noted how it didn't shy away from tight bends, it welcomed them, giving enough feedback and composure to let you carry speed through turns. With adjustable suspension and responsive brakes, it delivered a level of control that matched its pace. The truly impressive part of the GS 1000 was how it balanced being quick without feeling fragile or demanding. It didn't push unpredictably or punish the rider, it invited speed in a confident, controlled way. The Suzuki GS 1000 earned its place in the record books because it proved fast, refined, and agile could all live in the same package. It wasn't just a race to the top, it was how you got there that really mattered. Number 10. Honda CB750. The moment you twist the throttle on the Honda CB750, the first thing you notice isn't flash. It's how quickly it claims space on the horizon. This bike redefined what street-legal speed could feel like before modern superbikes even existed. At its heart, the CB750 housed a 4-stroke, air-cooled, single overhead camshaft inline-4, displacing 748 cubic centimeters. In its KZ iteration, it produced approximately 77 horsepower at 9,000 revolutions per minute and delivered 48 pound-feet of torque at 7,000 revolutions per minute. The specs pulled off more than just numbers. They unleashed credible pace without asking for ridiculous effort. That pace showed on every ride, with a top speed pushing into the mid-120s, around 125 miles per hour, and quarter-mile times in the low 13-second range. This Honda held its own against larger bikes. Massive speed wasn't its only trick. It delivered it with the confidence framed rigid standards made possible. Tight enough to feel alive, stable enough to feel safe. What made it stand out wasn't raw horsepower, but how it made speed manageable. The frame and brakes were measured in their response, stretching capability ahead of ambition. Lift the front wheel gingerly, land it deliberately, and repeat. With each stint, the CB750 stayed calm. That level of composure allowed the speed to speak for itself, sudden, solid, and effortlessly enjoyable. When you throw a leg over it, you get a bike that doesn't force speed, it invites it. The Honda CB750 delivered a ride where speed felt earned and easy in equal measure. Number 9. Suzuki GT750. When Suzuki introduced the GT750, they didn't claim it was the fastest, yet it made that clear every time the highway opened up. The GT owed its impact to being a touring machine that didn't compromise on pace. Its engine was a 2-stroke liquid-cooled, 3-cylinder unit displacing 739 cubic centimeters. Early models produced around 67 horsepower and approximately 56 pound-feet of torque. By 1974, output rose to roughly 70 horsepower, and later models edged towards 73 horsepower. Those numbers may not have been groundbreaking on paper, but paired with its substantial touring-ready build, they created a surprising punch. On the road, its behavior was telling. Initial versions topped out at about 110 miles per hour, but later versions pushed that toward 120 miles per hour. Quarter-mile runs landed in the mid-13-second range, typically between 13.2 and 13.5 seconds. For a heavyweight sports tourer, those figures stood out. What stood out even more was how the GT750 applied its speed. The liquid cooling kept temperatures steady over long rides, and its smooth power delivery came with more refinement than most two-strokes offered. The wide, supportive seat, steady chassis, and robust brakes created a package that could handle high-speed work without faltering. It wasn't built to dart through corners. It was built to do so at speed, predictably. The Suzuki GT750 showed that smooth performance and mile-hungry reliability could come packaged with genuine top-end capability. Number 8. Kawasaki H1500 Mach 3. There are motorcycles that feel like they were built for calm, controlled acceleration, and then there's the Kawasaki H1500 Mach 3. This bike didn't just deliver speed, it demanded your full attention the moment the throttle opened. Underneath the tank sat a 2-stroke air-cooled 3-cylinder engine, displacing 499 cubic centimeters. Early versions claimed roughly 60 horsepower and about 41 pound-feet of torque. Those figures may look modest today, but in a platform that weighed just over 380 pounds when wet, they added up to an astonishing power-to-weight ratio. The impact was immediate. Top speed hovered in the vicinity of 124 miles per hour, and the quarter mile came up in around 12.4 seconds. That pace blurred the line between street bikes and track machinery, and for its time, it was startling. What made this motorcycle unforgettable wasn't just acceleration, but how it did it. The power arrived in waves, choppy, abrupt waves that would often lift the front wheel with the slightest provocation. Riders found themselves hanging on for dear life, discovering corners the hard way. Handling was twitchy, brakes were modest. It was raw speed in its purest form. Even so, it earned a fan base among thrill seekers who wanted performance over polish. It wasn't forgiving, but it didn't pretend to be. Every ride felt like a test, not of top speed, but of nerve. No other bike of the era offered such a direct, unapologetic shot of two-stroke power in such a compact package. It was reckless by design, and for those ready, that was exactly the point. Number 7. Yamaha XS650. The Yamaha XS650 never claimed to be a head-turning speed machine, but on the open road it surprised many riders with its steady pace and dependable power. This wasn't a contender for the quarter-mile crown, but it turned heads in its own way. Power came from an air-cooled, single overhead camshaft, parallel twin engine, displacing 653 cubic centimeters. Around the mid-70s, Yamaha tuned it to produce about 53 horsepower at 7,200 revolutions per minute, delivering roughly 39.8 pound-feet of torque. At its heart, that was modest, but the bike's reliability and consistency turned those numbers into real-world usability. On the road, the Yamaha XS650 peaked at a top speed of around 115 miles per hour, with some later figures stretching to roughly 112.5 miles per hour. The standing quarter mile came in at approximately 13.86 seconds, with a terminal speed of 96.05 miles per hour. Those results placed it slightly behind full-on sport bikes, but ahead of big twins and cruisers. For the era, it offered respectable pace, without demanding extreme effort from the rider. What made the XS650 stand out wasn't its sprint times, it was how it rode all day. The frame felt balanced, the suspension compliant, and the wide spread of torque made highway riding relaxed. Unlike sharper machines that punished rough roads, the XS brushed off fatigue. It could carry a second rider or luggage without losing composure or pace. That's what gave it character. Not blistering launches, but dependable motion. It wasn't built to intimidate, it was built to endure, and still managed to cruise with its share of speed. Number 6. Honda CB504K. Not every fast bike steals the show with horsepower charts. Some win by being sharper than you expect. The Honda CB504K fell into that category. It wasn't the flashiest, but on the right road, it felt every bit as quick as many bigger machines. Beneath the tank sat an air-cooled, single overhead camshaft, inline-4 engine, displacing 498 cubic centimeters. It produced about 47 horsepower at 9,000 revolutions per minute and offered roughly 33 pound-feet of torque at 7,500 revolutions per minute. Those numbers might not jump off the page today, but paired with a weight near 445 pounds, the CB504K delivered pace that felt immediate and eager. On the road, that meant a top speed close to 111 miles per hour. The quarter mile came in at about 13.86 seconds, with a terminal speed hovering around 96 miles per hour. Not record-breaking, but for a bike touted as 500 for the quiet man, that pace was quietly compelling, and just what many riders needed. Handling played a large part in its appeal. With a lighter frame than the legendary CB750, it felt agile, especially compared to the bulkier, big-bore 4s. Steering was precise, suspension controlled, and the brakes consistent, even on spirited rides. It made maintaining momentum feel intuitive, which is as much a performance advantage as straight-line speed. What truly made the CB504K interesting was how it bridged the gap between manageable pace and Sunday afternoon usability. The smooth power delivery didn't intimidate, the upright posture begged to be ridden, and it didn't demand constant attention to stay fast. Instead, it felt grounded, reliable, and fast enough to surprise when called upon. In a decade chasing headline numbers, this Honda spoke differently. It wasn't about claiming the top spot, it was about showing that speed could be approachable. The Honda CB504K proved sometimes quiet performance makes more of an impression than outright flash. Number 5. Suzuki GT 550. Some motorcycles carry a reputation for being dependable commuters or cross-country machines, but every so often, one of those workhorses proves it can also move quickly when asked. The Suzuki GT 550 was exactly that kind of motorcycle. Comfortable for distance, yet fast enough to earn respect on the strip. At the heart of the bike was a 3-cylinder, 2-stroke engine displacing 543 cubic centimeters. It delivered about 50 horsepower at 6,500 revolutions per minute, with torque measured near 41 pound-feet. These numbers didn't suggest anything radical on paper, but once the throttle opened up, the smoothness of the power band combined with the responsiveness of the 2-stroke gave the Suzuki a lively edge. Top speed was reported at just over 110 miles per hour, with the standing quarter mile coming in close to 14.5 seconds. For a middleweight touring machine, those results made it more than just a casual cruiser. Riders soon realized that while bigger bikes took the spotlight, the GT 550 could hold its own, when measured by real-world performance. Part of its capability came from Suzuki's attention to cooling. The ram air system surrounding the cylinders prevented the engine from running hot during long, high-speed rides. Oil injection worked with the carburetors to deliver consistent fueling, which meant riders didn't have to sacrifice reliability for bursts of speed. The 3-4 exhaust setup helped spread the power evenly, making the bike both quick off the line and steady once up to speed. On the road, it struck a balance between composure and urgency. The chassis kept the weight centered, the suspension smoothed uneven surfaces, and braking remained predictable. Instead of overwhelming its rider, the GT550 offered confidence at speed, which is what made it so effective. It may not have been the loudest or most aggressive motorcycle of the 70s, but the Suzuki GT550 showed riders that speed and stamina didn't have to live in separate categories. Number 4. Honda CB750F Supersport. By the mid-70s, Honda knew that riders wanted more than just smooth cruising. They wanted sharper handling and stronger acceleration to match the rising performance benchmarks of the era. The answer was the Honda CB750F Supersport, a machine built to take the original CB formula and make it faster, leaner, and more focused on speed. The air-cooled inline-4 engine displaced 736 cubic centimeters and was tuned with a higher compression ratio than the earlier CB models. Power output climbed to about 68 horsepower at 9,000 revolutions per minute, with torque reaching 44 pound-feet at 7,500 revolutions per minute. Those figures gave it a noticeable edge in acceleration, especially when paired with revised gearing that delivered quicker response through the mid-range. On the strip, the CB750F Supersport managed the quarter mile in just under 13 seconds, with trap speeds over 100 miles per hour. Top speed hovered near 125 miles per hour, making it one of the fastest Japanese motorcycles available when it debuted. What made those numbers impressive was how accessible they felt to the average rider. Speed was no longer the privilege of specialists, but available to anyone with the will to ride. Handling also saw significant improvements. Honda fitted the bike with a stiffer frame, upgraded suspension, and a 4-into-1 exhaust that not only shaved weight but also improved ground clearance in corners. Riders reported that the Supersport felt tighter and more responsive than the standard CB, which had been designed with broader comfort in mind. The change marked Honda's recognition that motorcycles weren't just for transportation, they were instruments of performance. On open highways, the bike pulled strongly through every gear, but it was in spirited backroad riding where the changes became clear. Stability at speed, predictable braking, and responsive steering gave riders confidence to push harder without feeling out of control. The CB750F Supersport was proof that Honda could adapt quickly to a competitive landscape while still delivering reliability. Rather than just revisiting the past, this model looked ahead. The Honda CB750F Supersport became the bridge between the original superbike and the performance-oriented machines that would dominate the following decade. Number 3. Yamaha TZ350. Few bikes carry the DNA of Grand Prix racing into street-level reckoning, but the Yamaha TZ350 did just that, and more sharply than most expected. It was a race-ready machine that blurred the lines between competition and rideable performance. Built as a factory Grand Prix motorcycle, the TZ350 packed a compact two-stroke parallel twin air-cooled engine displacing 347 cubic centimeters. Across its models, power climbed from around 60 brake horsepower in early versions to approximately 72 brake horsepower in later iterations. That kind of output from a sub-400 engine was explosive for the era, and the bike delivered it with minimal weight behind it. On the track, it showed what it was capable of. Top speed exceeded 180 miles per hour, and its power-to-weight ratio put it among the quickest machines of the decade, period. The TZ350 didn't need to hit triple digits slowly. It did it with authority, setting benchmarks that street bikes would chase for years. Even off the track, the racing DNA pushed the experience forward. Front and rear disc brakes tightened control under heavy braking. Adjustable monoshock suspension gave precision in how it handled, while the chassis remained lightweight enough to feel responsive in virtually any setting. It had the feel of a precision instrument. Everything felt as purposeful as its pace. A rider didn't have to be a pro to feel the edge. With its crisp power band and tight turning response, the TZ350 taught how pace could be mastered, not just feared. It drew a clear line between simply being fast and feeling connected to what made speed possible. The Yamaha TZ350 made fast feel real. Even for those not racing, it made riders understand that quick wasn't about horsepower alone, but where it came from and how you controlled it. Number 2. Honda CB 750 SOHC. It's easy to underestimate the Honda CB 750 SOHC because it doesn't wear its speed on its sleeve, but when you give it full throttle, it quietly reminds you just how quickly it can move. Inside the frame, it housed an air-cooled, single overhead camshaft inline-4 engine, displacing 736 cubic centimeters. Early units delivered around 68 horsepower at 8,500 revolutions per minute and cranked out 44 pound-feet of torque at 7,000 revolutions. That power, while modest on paper, felt vehement when paired with a dry weight of approximately 480 pounds. Quick off the line and easy to keep rolling. The figures backed it up. Top speed topped out near 125 miles per hour, and the CB cleared the quarter mile in around 13 seconds. That level of pace earned it reputation long before modern superbikes arrived, blending confidence and speed in a way few middleweights of the era could match. Beyond the numbers, it was how the bike felt under throttle that made a difference. The power curve was smooth, yet firm, enough torque to make overtakes effortless, and enough punch to make highway passing feel decisive. The chassis was stable without being cumbersome, and braking was composed. Unlike sharper machines, the CB 750 SOHC didn't veer into twitchy territory when called on to perform. That consistency created trust. Riders found they could open it up, hold up with demanding pace, and still feel grounded. Over full rides, it held composure, better than bikes chasing raw output, making speed feel responsive rather than wild. So when you ride the Honda CB 750 SOHC, you notice that speed doesn't always have to shout to feel real. Number 1. Kawasaki Z750 Twin. You don't expect a heavy twin to outpace most of its four-cylinder contemporaries, but that's exactly what the Kawasaki Z750 Twin could do when you leaned into the throttle. It wasn't built to eclipse superbikes on paper, but it surprised riders on the road. The engine was a four-stroke, air-cooled parallel twin, displacing 748 cubic centimeters. It produced about 55 horsepower at 7,000 revolutions per minute, with torque of approximately 45 pound-feet at 3,000 revolutions per minute. Those numbers weren't headline grabbers, yet the bike hauled hard. Its broad, low-end torque made it feel quicker than its spec sheet suggested. When you rode it hard, it kept up with many bikes that sported bigger output figures. The top speed hit close to 104 miles per hour, and the standing quarter mile clocked in around 14.2 seconds. That pace, especially from a mid-70s parallel twin, meant it held its own in real-world riding more than it let on. What helped was how it delivered power. The balanced engine had fewer vibrations, the chassis remained steady at speed, and the brakes, still twin discs, front and rear, gave proportional confidence under hard stops. It didn't dart or swerve. Instead, it stayed composed, even when extended beyond its comfort zone. Riders quickly realized that speed didn't always come from pushing hard. Instead, the Z750 Twin reminded them that well-managed torque and steady performance matter just as much. From city streets to quarter-mile strips, these 70s machines proved that speed wasn't just a number, it was a statement. Got another Japanese rocket from that era you think deserves mention? Drop it below, hit like, and subscribe for more.